Okay, I want to welcome you to the 22nd episode of Stefan Frank's Photobook Show. Today's theme is what is a photograph actually? And for those of you who are new, Stefan is an artist living in Germany. He is teaching quite a variety of classes for StrudelmediaLive, from surrealism to gestalt to mentoring intensive. Currently, he's teaching Shape of Shapes. And yeah, thanks for being here. I'm Anja from StrudelmediaLive. We offer live online photography classes, talks, scholarships, and many other things. And I want to very quickly tell you about upcoming classes. Kai McBride's class, Summer Nights Through a Lens, sold out so quickly that we decided to add a second section. So there will be a second round of Kai's class. For all of those who didn't make it into the first round, you have another opportunity. It starts on Tuesday, July 22nd. We only added it to the website today. There'll be a class called Explore the Botanical World Through Photography with Nestor Perez Molière. We have a 2-hour mini workshop coming up with Liz Castaldo that is about making a handmade notebook so that you can take your own handmade notebook with you on your summer travels. And we have a new teacher this summer. His name is Peter Garfield, and he will teach a color class. Some of you might know Kai McBride's black and white prompt class. I think it's called Assignment Monochrome, and this will be a similar version in color. It's called Creative Color Photography Techniques, Exercises, and Approaches. It's also about how to make your color photos look good in Lightroom. And we have a history class coming up this summer. It's called What Makes a Photograph Documentary with Dortje Fink, who is based in Berlin. Plus several more mini workshops this summer. And also I want to remind you of our YouTube channel. If you have missed any past talks, you can find them there. Yeah, I think that's about it. And I want to thank Stefan yet again, for yet another Photobook show. Enjoy, and Stefan, I'm handing it over to you.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you all for showing up here. I'm very happy to see some familiar faces and see some new faces here. What is a photograph actually? I cannot promise you that you come out of this talk and know what it is, because I don't have a definite answer for you. I have, although, a lot of questions surrounding that. So with that being said, let me just jump right in with telling you a little bit about the books I will be, about the background of the books, why I chose them, what I'm interested in, what made me interested in these books, and what's the context of this. So, as it is usual, so we always fumble around a little bit with the title here. I think it is moving a little bit between these two questions. The aura of the print, this is the title, the first title that I came up with when I looked at the work of Sarah Moon, Kunié Sugiura, and Deborah Turbeville, the three photographers we'll be looking at today. This was the first title that came to my mind, and the reason why I came to this title and what this actually has to do with what a photograph actually is. Let me try to explain this to you. The important word in this sentence is the aura. So the aura goes back to the idea of talking in connotation with a photograph about the aura of an artwork, comes from Walter Benjamin. There are not so many canonical texts in photographic theory. This is most certainly one of them. So this is a work of art in the work in the age of its technical reproducibility from 1939. And this is one of the books I always come back to, because it has so many has so many aspects to it that still resonate with me today. Let me just give you one quote to start with. In even the most perfect reproduction, one thing is lacking, the here and now of the work of art. Its unique existence in a particular place. It is this unique existence and nothing else that bears the mark of the history to which the work has been subject. Benjamin talks about photography as a little bit as the enemy of art because it destroys this moment of here and now of the artwork. This is his starting point in the book. And let me get back to one of these. So this is the my copy of it that is now a little bit overused. Let's stop on this one that bears the mark of the history to which the work of has been subject. I think it's important to, when you look at Benjamin, to look at the age when he was writing these books. That was 1939 in Germany, and that was a troubled time in Germany. This was the high time of fascism. So this is the background, the mark of history that left its marks on Benjamin's life. So he ended up fleeing from the Nazis and died in Spain while trying to escape Europe. But this is what influenced his talking about reproducibility and artwork. And it's a weird thing to think about this from our perspective today, to think about that Benjamin was in the middle of this human catastrophe and he was thinking about art. What a weird thing to do. But this things, this media that we're looking at, well, of course, we're looking at a photo of Adolf Hitler, and these kinds of photos were circulating in Germany at that time and were the background of what Benjamin was influenced by. The dominating media at that age and the media that made fascism and the rise of Adolf Hitler and the NSDAP possible was cinema and radio. So the moving picture and the voice. And it was the age when the silent movies stopped and the talking movies, the talkies, were coming up. So this was one of the first propaganda films by Leni Riefenstahl, Triumph of the Will, directed in 1937, and she was documenting the Reichsparteitag. So there was a huge party conference of the NSDAP in Nuremberg, in one of the German cities. And Riefenstahl was making these kinds of pictures at that time. And these pictures were then circulated through the cinemas in Germany and showed the masses and the enthusiasm they were showing. So it's interesting to approach documentary from this angle. So because Leni Riefenstahl was laying out the blueprint for what a documentary and what a propaganda movie is. So she was using both aspects of this. The weird thing about the atrociousness of this movie is that it is, on the other hand, a beautiful filmed movie. Leni Riefenstahl was an excellent photographer and an excellent cinematographer. So it's she practically invented all the modern tools of propaganda, like these shots that made Hitler look much larger than life. So this was made possible by advancements in camera technique, and these advancements in technique, both in the cinema, in how voice was transmitted, the voice of Hitler was transmitted, how cameras were able to catch the action of these rallies, this was one of the driver of the success of the fascist regime in Germany. That was the rise in Germany and pretty much in the world of the media political complex, the way that politics, in this case, a fascist, used media for their gain, for their interest, to further their movement. And right from the beginning of this media political complex, you had photographers like, for example, Leni Riefenstahl, who was complicit in furthering this agenda. She was right in the middle. She was good friends with Adolf Hitler and Maria Braun. And the interesting thing to remind us to think that Benjamin was that these kinds of movies, the voice and the pictures of the NSDAP, that this was the background of this book. The other part of that is that we have to understand that Benjamin was a socialist, so he was very well aware of how class and how political understandings, political movements influence the way we look into the world. And this goes back to the now mostly discredited Karl Marx, this simple sentence, Design bestimmt das Bewusstsein, being determines consciousness. This is hard to understand for us from our point of view, that this was hard to understand from their point of view. The idea of materialism, the idea that the social fabric of the society determines how you understand a photograph, how you understand an artwork, and that this had a material basis. This was new to philosophy and to our understanding of how medias and how artworks work. Until that time, especially in Germany, there was this an idea of idealism. The idea came from having much more control about your life. So you're thinking, how you see, how you understand the world. This in turn shapes the world and then shapes your understanding. So the idea to decenter this and say, yeah, it's maybe not like, it's not so easy like that. It's also the class you have been raised in, the pictures you see on TV, the people that you talk to. This is what determines your ideology. And this is based in your material surrounding, not only in your ideas. This was a revolution in our understanding of how societies work. So what Benjamin added at this moment was the idea that it is not only your class, your social fabric that you grew up with, but it is also the media that you look at. That media determines consciousness. And so he was the first one who looked at Riefenstahl's film and saw that this, of course, has an effect. And it does not only have an effect on how you perceive the NSDAP, but how you perceive an artwork. And this was the root of his being concerned with media and looking at media in a way, how does it work? How does it change us? The other thing that he was concerned with is how technologies change our consciousness. And for this, he looked at things like photography, of course. And photography was at that point in time an emergent technology that was completely new, that completely revolutionized the way we perceived an artwork. And it not only brought up this art, the genre of photography itself, but also changed our relationships to how we see a painting. Suddenly we could take a photo of a painting and carry it around and put it on a billboard or put it into a book. And that was something that he perceived as totally changing how we perceive this artwork. when I looked at the books, I also stumbled about over this one. This is a talk that Roland Meyer, a philosopher who deals with modern day technologies, modern day media, and their influence on the political will and on society. So he deals especially with how generative AI is used today. And I stumbled upon this video and was amazed by the amount of time that lies between this. So this is almost now almost 100 years ago. So everything has changed. Our whole technological environment has completely changed. And he is using the techniques that Benjamin helped invent to think about things that govern our technological horizon, like generative AI. And here he especially looks at something else that connects us to this age. He looks at generative AI and the aesthetics of digital fascism. So the thing that he's talking about here is that AI image generators are optimized to satisfy the expectations of a relatively small and homogeneous group of power users. And these are predominantly white, male, tech-minded middle class from North America. And you don't have to come up with some kind of conspiracy theory. This is just the way it is. This is just the way the people are that work in this area. And these are the people that have the money to govern, to steer how these technologies develop. And from there, it is not much of a surprise that this, of course, appeals to offers pictures that appeal to male white with a certain mindset. So this is why so many people in these positions adapt these kinds of imagery. Like here, Elon Musk, who is crossing over all historical boundaries and painting himself as a Roman emperor. But of course, we also know all these pictures of that Trump posts of himself, and of course, here he is using this to satisfy his urges to display him in a certain way. And it is no surprise that these technologies, they offer this satisfaction to him because they are some kind of a wish-fulfilling machine for him. This, of course, is not constrained to North America. This is something that fascist movements all over the world are adopting today. Here are things that make it make these technologies very agreeable to the German Alternative for Germany, which is our own fascist brand. And the more general you formulate your prompts to these machines, the more they expose their bias here. So when you prompt them with a happy German family, this is what Midjourney thinks how a happy German family looks like. And you immediately see that this is a different distance to the marks of history. Because I can assure you, happy German families don't look anything like this anymore. And I have no idea if they ever looked like this. But this is a wish fulfillment machine. So, of course, this excludes different concepts of family. This excludes gay marriage. This excludes different roles, different gender distributions. This reduces everything to a basic set of assumptions about what a happy German family looks like. Of course, you can go, the other thing that seems to lack from these kinds of machines are a certain temporality. So they all reach back into history. So there is a lot of fantasy about how the 50s looked like, or how nature was in order or is in order. So these are the kinds of images that you find in these machines because they are built to satisfy a certain set of assumptions about the world. And the fascinating thing about this is if you look at these very different points in time, suddenly the things that Benjamin said make a lot of sense. Second, technological reproduction can place the copy of the original in situations which the original itself cannot attain. Above all, it enables the original to meet the recipient halfway, whether in the form of a photograph or in that of a gramophone record. Cathedral leaves its site to be received in the studio of an art lover. The choral work performed in an auditorium or in the open air is enjoyed in a private room. And this quote has these two aspects. It has these aspects that temporal distances, like temporal distance to the 50s, for example, are reduced. Spatial distances are removed. So we can have no problem to imagine how Mars looks like and put people on the Mars in our visual fantasies. So this is one part, that these things, these distances get reduced. The other thing is the recipient is met halfway. So in contrast to us going to an artwork, going to Paris into the Louvre to watch the Mona Lisa, now we have a photo and the photo comes to us, and this poses different expectation on what the artwork does, what it performs, how it meets us halfway. And this halfway, compare it from 1939, where you had the first journals which had copies of artworks. Compare it to where we are today, where you have practically the whole visual library of the world in the palm of your hand when you look into your phone. These are different measures of meeting the recipient halfway. So halfway does not even do justice to our current availability of images. We expect things to be available, to be at the palm of our hands. And it also does not do justice to how these media machines, like, for example, Instagram or Facebook, how they are optimized to satisfy our expectations, to come not even halfway, but even closer to us. This is what these media machines do. They not only form the bubble, but they wrap their bubbles around us. And let's make it real personal here, because this, of course, this changes the way that I perceive images. As I work digitally, the first encounter with my own photography is on a screen. So I do not encounter it in a print, or I do not encounter it like Diane Arbus did when she made the first prints from her negative. I encounter my photographs on a screen. And this is the way that we encounter Diane Arbus. You can just put it into Instagram and get pretty much all the pictures she ever did, and you just have it at the tip of your hands. But you do not get it as a print. You get it as a tiny stamp on your screen. The other part of this encounter with this, it was this book that I eventually got. So this is the way I encountered Diane Arbus. And of course, this is different from going into a gallery and looking at these kids larger and facing you and having a certain distance to you. Here, the distance when you encounter a book is completely different. And it took Benjamin to remind us that these kinds of differences, going into a library, going into a gallery, opening your phone, looking at a screen, at an image, all these change our perception and all these change our relationship to the artwork. This is where his idea of the aura came from. I had my first encounter with the aura of a photograph when I went to a Diane Arbus exhibition. And this is how you have a different encounter to Diane Arbus. You just walk around the street and you see this face staring at you. And this is completely different than looking at a phone and seeing this image. And here I would love to show you images from the exhibition, but there is no photography in the exhibition. So when this exhibition was set up, it was made sure that nobody photographed there. So, and this was one of the few places where people were really strict. So when somebody whipped out their iPhone, there was immediately somebody coming over to make sure they do not photograph these photographs. And the interesting thing about Diane Arbus photographs is they have this aura. There is only one photographer, Neil Selkirk, that is allowed to make silver gelatin prints of the original negatives of Diane Arbus. Neil Selkirk has been working with Diane Arbus, and he knows her work. So when you go into the exhibition, you only see prints from two people, from Diane Arbus herself and from Neil Selkirk. So when then these exhibitions make sure there is no photography here, that makes it completely different, because suddenly you think, yeah, okay, this print, Diane Arbus really had her fingers on this. And this is a different feel towards the image and towards the photograph. And for me, this is how you can experience the aura of a photograph. Neil Selkirk himself called this the aha moment. So he said he really had this aha moment when he was standing in this dark room and developing his first print of a Diane Arbus work. And it's a different encounter. It's a different distance to the work of Diane Arbus. And this brings us to the core of what this is about. This is about mechanisms to turn a print or to turn a photograph into some kind of an object, into something that loses this liquidity of circulation that photographs have, and make them into something real and make them into something material. And this is the one thing that all these photographers we will be looking at have in common. And this again, when I looked at the talk by Roland Meyer at Republica, this is what really reminded me of this here. So this is what the circulation of photography does. What is really jeopardized when the historical testimony is affected is the authority of the object. So a print made by Diane Arbus on a wall has a different authority than a piece of pixels that I see on my phone of the very same image. But this is what the reproduction does to a photograph or to an artwork. Let's put this on. Let's remind ourselves that this is something that is currently happening on steroids. So this is a picture of the profile picture of Sam Altman. Sam Altman is the head of OpenAI, one of the largest artificial intelligence companies right now. And he made these kinds of pictures. So what he offers to his customers is the ability to make these kinds of anime headshots of themselves. And what does he base this on? So because Sam Altman can't draw, he doesn't know how to do an anime. So what he does is he built these kinds of machines and offers it to people and then allows them to transfer this style of drawing to transfer to different scenes. And how did he do that? This is Spirited Away, one of the greatest anime movies ever made. This is such a wonderful image, and this was, of course, painted and directed by Hayao Miyazaki, the head of Studio Ghibli, who was putting all his life's work and the marks of his own history and his own life into these kinds of movies. And you see this in every picture, you see this in every scene, you see this in every decision, in every artistic decision that he does, that these drawings, they are alive because they come from his own, they've come from his own experience. So, and what Altman does is quite simply, he just steals it. So he steals these kinds, he feeds these kinds of images into his OpenAI and then teaches the OpenAI image generators to produce images that are in the style of Studio Ghibli. And this is even more disgusting if you know that Miyazaki hates AI. So I'm utterly disgusted. If you really want to make creepy stuff, you can go ahead and do it, but I would never wish to incorporate this technology into my work at all. I strongly feel that this is an insult to life itself. So it's very good that Altman never asked Miyazaki if he was for permission to use his artwork. So, and this leads to all kinds of atrocities then. So this is something that the White House then circulated, a picture of an ICE worker deporting a woman in the style of Studio Ghibli. So these kinds of atrocities are what the circulation of images and these changed technology of images suddenly makes possible. And Sam Altman himself, he's very open about this, about stealing stuff. So he was asked when somebody showed a Peanuts cartoon that was generated with OpenAI. And he was asked at a conference, at first glance, this looks like IP theft. You guys don't have a deal with the Peanuts estate. And there was a huge applause in this conference because everybody knows that open AI companies are just stealing intellectual property here. And Altman responded to this, you can clap about that all you want, enjoy. So he knows what he's doing. He's adamant about doing that. And he has no intention to stop doing that. And there is different aspects to this. So this is these kinds of machine, this kinds of technology, these wish fulfillment machines, because this is what an AI is. You enter a prompt and it fulfills your wishes with an image. These are enormous resource intense. So this is a picture from a company that Elon Musk, who is with pretty much everything like here, he is also behind an AI. So he built this kind of data center in the span of 6 months and was applauded for it, for his braveness and for his technology expertise to catch up and feed his own AI machine Grok. And what you see here in these red areas are gas turbines. So what he's using an enormous number of emergency gas turbines that are not used for producing regular electricity, but they're usually only used for for emergency situations. For example, in an earthquake, when the electric circuits are breaking down, and you want to have energy for a hospital, then you use these gas turbines that are now in shortage because a lot of them were bought up by Elon Musk and are now used to power his data center. And of course, this is enormously costly, and it is an enormous waste of energy and pollution. So this is how these things look like, and he blasts on them 24 hours. And this brings us how we look at technology here. So this is a thermal image of these things. So American journalist Naomi Klein, in her article, End Time Fascism, she posed this as a very simple decision. So here we are. We have the decision if we want to vanish in these kinds of artificial, nostalgic fantasies that are AI produced, or if we want to live in the real world. And Elon Musk made the decision for the people in Memphis, because the people in Memphis are now dying of the exhaust fumes here. Here she posted this, Naomi Klein posted this very simple difference. These are enormously costly, and we are facing a rampaging climate crisis. And these things are very similar to what the Wachowski brothers invented in 1999, the idea that we have a devastated planet and we all get a plug into the back of our heads to live out our fantasies in a matrix. So she confronted us with this simple decision. Do we want to wake up to our world that is faulty and has issues and has problems to solve, or do we want to escape into our fantasy worlds? This is our decision to do, because from the makers of AI, we don't have to expect too much. For there to be a market, there must be something of value to exchange, but none of the plaintiff's works has economic value, individual as training data. So of course there are juristic struggles right now to discuss these kinds of intellectual property theft, but the people that are responsible for prosecuting that have all been sacked by now. So there is not much hope that these things hold up. And this is the way AI people look at art. They see it as training data. And I look at Miyazaki's work and say, okay, this is not training data. This is art. So this brings us to the question, because the question of the aura is always a question of how the aura is affected by technology. Benjamin defines the aura as, we define the aura of the natural object as a unique apparition of a distance, however near it may be. Weird thing to say, to put distance into that. The distance here is about having a relationship to something. And these kinds of media, these kinds of liquefying machines, they reduce all these distances. And with these reduced distances, they reduce all these relationships. And this is the reason why I showed the Wachowski brothers, because the Wachowski brothers had the genius idea of this plug, which immediately reduces all the distances to the things that you are looking at. The plug that you put into the back into your head to connect directly with the matrix. So distance is the word that you need for aura. And this is why we all go to the Louvre to do this, to be in a certain distance to the Mona Lisa. And this is when you feel this kind of aura. And it doesn't really matter if you're very close or if you're very far away. You have a certain you establish a certain relationship to this artwork. So, and this is not constrained to artwork. This is something that all objects have to follow with the eye while resting on a summer afternoon, a mountain range on the horizon, or a branch that casts its shadow on the beholder, is to breathe the aura of these mountains, of that branch. So this is part of the red pill of this waking up and see this distance. So it is in the light of this description that we can grasp the social basis of the aura's decay. It rests on two circumstances, both linked to the increasing significance of the masses in contemporary life, namely the desire of the present-day masses to get closer to things, spatially and humanly, and their equally passionate concern for overcoming each thing's uniqueness by assimilating it as a reproduction. These are the two things that ruin the aura, that endanger the aura of the artwork. But, and this is very bleak, and I don't know why I end up starting out with these wonderful books and ending up at these kind of bleak outcomes. Maybe it's just how the days is, how the days. Interestingly enough, Benjamin was at the height of, in the middle of this, when photography really came to itself. So there was a first Leicas, which at that time were a democratization of photography. This is when photography really came to the masses. So he was concerned with the idea of what is the aura of the photograph then? And this brings us to the question when we look at the different ways of how photographs, how we look at photographs. What is then actually the photograph? And is it the negative? Like Selkirk said when he's looked at Arbus's negative. Is it the print that he did? Is it the framed photo in an exhibition when we encounter it? Is it the reproduction in a journal? Or is it the doom-called version on the image of the same image of Diana Arbus on Instagram? Is it the picture on a billboard? Or is it something else? Is it something that transcends all these things? Is it the encounter? So is it this afternoon in New York Central Park when Diane Arbus was seeing this fellow here and had this brief exchange with him when she saw this hand grenade in his hand? So is it the encounter? So is it something that where the photograph is only the husk of it? Is it the fame? And there is something to say about Diane Arbus because she had this very ambivalent attitude toward these encounters. She was chatting everybody up who she found interested, but she was, some critics says she was only interested in the people to take their photographs. So we never really know what for her were actually the photographs. So this brings us to the task of the photographer. So the task of the photographer is find your personal answer to that. What for you is the photograph. And this means finding your relationship to the material, so to the physical presence of the photograph. How does it end up, but also to its circulation. And this now, sorry, that was a long arc. Now I realize this when I've been talking about this so long. There is hope for that because there is resistance against this loss of aura, and we're looking at different three photographers who have a different idea about that. They have this idea: the print determines consciousness, so the print determines photography. So they have a definite answer to what is the photograph. It is a print. And the photographs that we'll be talking about is Sarah Moon, Deborah Turbeville, and Kunié Sugiura. Sarah Moon was born in France in 1941, and all of these photographers are connected to the historic mark. So the historic mark that claimed Benjamin's life, Sarah Moon was also affected. She was living in occupied France and her family had to flee to London. She studied drawing in England, started a modeling career in London, and eventually transitioned from modeling to photography. So she was working in fashion, worked for Cacharel, for Chanel, for Dior, Comme des Garçons, and especially for Vogue. She was the first woman to photograph for the prestigious Pirelli calendar. So she was at both ends. So she was at the living in the outcome, in the aftermath of the Second World War that was caused by this, that was in part caused by this change in media. But she was also living in a time where women were entering a field that was previously close to them. Diane Arbus was also working in photography. There were not a lot of female photographers at that time working in fashion. Deborah Turbeville, the other photographer, she is even closer to Benjamin. She comes from Massachusetts, died 2013 in New York City, worked with Richard Avedon, and even took a masterclass with Diane Arbus. So she also started her career working for Harper's Bazaar. She eventually lived in New York, Paris, St. Petersburg, and Mexico. Kunié Sugiura was born in Nagoya, Japan, which was also affected by the Second World War. Japan was very poor, and she, in the interview that I posted, it's a wonderful interview. She said everybody would try to get out of Japan, of Nagoya, because at that time it was like a crumbling version of Detroit, and everybody wanted to get out there. She has relocated to New York City, where she still lives in Chinatown, as far as I know. Which now brings us to the books. Sorry for this long introduction, but that really clicked for me, because they are all connected. They form these long arc from Benjamin or Arbus to these kinds of books. Let's begin with Passé Présent by Sarah Moon, trying to work with the light here. As I said, everybody, each and every one of these photographs, they have a different approach to the materiality of the photograph. Sarah Moon is working with Polaroid negatives. There was in the 70s, there was a short-lived, large format Polaroid, wonderful Polaroid film, which really had this 8x10 sheets that produced both. They produced both a negative and a positive. And both were very fragile. So when you peeled them apart, you got a negative that allowed you to reproduce the image, but it also gave you this positive. And this is a different materiality. It's very different from having a digital photograph that is malleable, that can be changed, that can be scanned in. It is a material object, something that you peeled away sheet. And this is something that plagues all these books that I will show you. Of course, this kind of materiality that also prevents that you really have an haptic feel about how these images are. So here you see from the peeling apart, this always leaves scratches and marks on the image here. And of course, you have to scan this in and reproduce it and photograph it again. So you get a picture of an actual mark in another picture. Let me start in the middle. This is what Sarah Moon is about. It's about wonder. It's about looking into the world and photographing its wonders. And when you look at these kinds of photos that always bear this mark of her hand peeling away this foils here, and you see these scratches here all over the place. This is what talks about the materiality of these prints. And it's hard to reproduce. It's hard to reproduce in a book, but this Passé Présent, which is a catalog for a large retrospective exhibition of her work, they do they do a job that is as good as the material allows, because they are hard to reproduce. These are wonderful photographs. You always see her heritage as a fashion photographer. But she has a different approach to this. So she has there are photographs in here that have nothing to do with fashion, that have just to do with a certain experience of the world, with encounters with people. And she's not only working in still photography, but she's also doing movies of her work. And there are pictures in there that have these storytelling arc here. So this is one of the wonderful pictures in there that have open it up to interpretation what has happened here. So on the one hand, this is a wonderful, wonderful photo. On the other hand, it tells it offers some gruesome gruesome explanations for what has happened here. So are we seeing a dead person here? What has happened here? So it's all these kinds of questions that are alluded to, but they are not answered. So this is a wonder from the wonder in the text here. This is to the wonder of photography, this open-endedness that these photographs offer. The text here is, it looks like everybody loves Sarah Moon. So there's an enormous number of fellow photographers, like here, Daido Maruyama, who praise her work. And this is what these little texts always represent here. This is a wonderful page that shows her cinematic approach to photography, the idea of storytelling with photography, but always with this idea of an open-endedness of the story. She has both these two aspects. So she has these aspects of casual observations like this one here, this bird caught in flight. But she also has this idea and the background of being a professional fashion photographer, of setting up a scene and placing people in a scene, coming up with these kinds of image ideas where she sets up this background in a completely different stage, which looks like a kind of a cemetery, and she put these background of a forest in here. And as I said, these pictures do not have clear explanation what they have about, but they always allude to a certain myth in there. So this is her series on Little Red Riding Hood. So the idea to take a fairy tale as her starting point. And I wanted to show you this image because a lot of the images look nostalgic, bear this mark of nostalgia. This is something that she invites with her technique, with Polaroid negative, but she's very much a person of the modern world. So she does not shy away from photographing these masts of electricity or these exit signs here. So there is nostalgia in here, but she is very much alive in her tongue. So this is, as it is, like with all of these books that I show today, these are catalogs accompanying an exhibition, so they do not have a common themes, but they collect an enormous number of very beautiful images. Let me get you to the second one. Deborah Turbeville. Strangely enough, with this very French-sounding name, she is an American but she has a very European style to her photography, especially to her photography. And the book is called Photo Collage, and the title already gives away what her approach to materiality is about. So this is how she experiences a photo. She makes a darkroom print of the photo, and then she tears it apart, and then she puts it together with these large pins here and assembles them. And this is her approach to the materiality of the print. Many of these pictures came out of her fashion work, and they often feel like these outtakes of her fashion work, so things that did not make it into the magazine because they were too strange, they were too awkward. So this is from her series Dummy Factory, and they always have this feel. After the shot was done, everybody was joking around, and this is how these very intimate photos came to play. But this is the way she approaches her photography. So for her, this is a photograph. This thing she assembles on her table and puts it together with glue and tape. And this is just the reproduction of this. This is what plagues all these books, is that they cannot capture the actual materiality of these things. The strange thing about this is all three photographers started working in branches of photography that were predominantly dominated by men. So when Sarah Moon was working and Deborah Turbeville was working in the 70s, fashion photography was dominated by a male gaze, by men looking at women. And there were only a few female photographers that managed to break into this. And this is what makes it, for me, puts me in an awkward position, because this is always feels like a situation of women without men. And it always feels like the male gaze is weirdly absent from these photos. They feel intimate, but they have no sexual attitude to them. It seems to be a glance in how women develop when there is no male gaze present. And this is something, of course, that I as a male, I cannot experience. I only have these kinds of pictures to give me some kind of idea of what happens then. So the whole book doesn't have a single man in them. It always has these faces of very beautiful women, beautiful in the sense they are usually casted for these kinds of fashion shootings. But they show them in a different way. They show them outside of this fashion context. She has an excellent view for these kind of gestures. I'm always blown away by this picture, which is so quiet and simple. But here you see the materiality of this, the repetition, the tearing apart, the putting together again. I find this series wonderful here because she usually photographs these fashion models that represent a certain female body type, but she is not constrained to that. So this is a series she did on her friend Marie Mortiz, which at that time would certainly not have appeared in these high gloss fashion magazines. But she makes these wonderful photos of her, and she introduces a different way on a different look on the female body here. And this is groundbreaking for her time. This is something that we have that we just developed in the 2010s and seems to be associated with a modern view on the body. But this was the early 70s here that we're looking at. Wonderful series on Versailles. She was a friend with Jackie Onassis, and Jackie Onassis managed to get her into Versailles and into the backrooms of Versailles in the 70s. And she made these pictures of the archives of Versailles, these statues that were stowed away for the winter. So here you see her roots in European photography, especially in Eugène Auger, who has been photographing in these kinds of environments here. Here is another example of materiality. So the idea that you make the print from your negative and you shape it in the way that you see fit for your composition. So it's not constrained by what the negative gives you, but what the print, the negative, the darkroom print allows you to do with the image. And here she continues with these kinds of, I'm in the darkroom, I'm working with my negatives. I'm writing on my negatives. And she's living with these. So here you have these examples of scratching on the negative and then afterwards scrambling the finished print and then rephotographing all these markers of working with the photograph. And this is different from the clean digital circulating work that we're so used to. And it all is based on this materiality of the image. She had this wonderful feeling for space, how to arrange people in a scene. You see her fashion background in pretty much every image, but you see how it helps her to organize these scenes. Wonderful book, wonderful photographer. And let me end with the third approach to materiality in an image. This is Kunié Sugiura. I already mentioned her that she's from Japan and she migrated to New York and still lives in a loft in Chinatown. And Kunié Sugiura studied art in Japan and studied ceramics in Japan and then moved to New York. And what she started out with was these kinds of images. So she used she used a fisheye lens that really distorts the image when you really go close to it. So right from the beginning, she was working against this documentary approach of just photographing what you see, but she used all of this as her starting material of being informed of what these shapes are. And this is from 67, so you also see the pop influences here by Warhol and the other people working on there. She extensively used darkroom techniques. This is again 67. There is no digital manipulation here, so it's all happening in the darkroom here. So these are her beginnings. The photo canvas. The next approach is when she was going into large format prints of almost featureless things like this beach here, where you absolutely have no idea of what you are seeing here. But the size of this is 60 by 84 inch, so these are really large. And the materiality, again, is the important thing about this here. So the size of it, this plays a huge role. Sometimes it's very straightforward what she does. Sometimes it's interested in shapes. Sometimes she's interested in these kind of textures. And these are her beginnings of photography. She then went into photo painting. So the idea to have multiple prints of the same image, but at the same time putting something in between there that is painted. So right now, the artwork is no longer the photograph or the canvas, but it's a combination of the two, and it only exists in a certain materialization. So again, this is here. These are huge. These are 30 by 76, and this is where this book and the reproduction of this artwork starts to break down, because here the artworks, when you see them in the gallery, they are huge. When you see them here reproduced, not only in the book, but now on your screen, so everything gets even tinier, so you lose a lot of this materiality here. So you lose the texture of her painting on here, which is sometimes a shame. So this is, as you see here, it's already a large book. Still, the pictures become eventually so tiny that it's hard to see what they are about. So this is 37 by 114 inches. So imagine it, this is really a huge installation when you see it hanging. She started using color here, large color fields to structure her. She started using enlargements of her negatives. She started experimenting with this kind of structures here, how big they have to be. And this is what the materiality gives you. A photograph doesn't really have a size. These things already have a defined size. Sometimes these pictures are really blow you away, like this here, Open War was Red. This is one of my favorite. This is the idea that you start to speculate about the color that you see here. These are three fields, certain views of the same thing, but just a wonderful construction here. The book contains then some studies for these paintings, and not all of them made it into these wooden installations, these large installations. Sometimes just mounted everything onto a piece of paper, which is something which is a takeaway, was a takeaway for me yeah, you can just do it. You do not just have to print your photo boringly in the middle. You can just paint something right next to it. And you can start with something that is small. She then continued her investigations into the body. When you remember this is where she started photographing bodies and getting an idea on how it bends and shapes. Now she's starting to look into the body in another field of photography. So she's starting to use X-rays that she made of herself, that were made of her when she was ill, X-rays she made of other people, montages of these X-rays. Again, here for these kinds of works, the materiality, how she organizes it, how she puts it into this postcard screens, into this postcard props. This is the important thing of it, the materiality of it, the breaking apart of the image, how it assembles, how it comes together. She continued dealing with the body and dealing with the materiality of it by placing herself on photosensitive paper and making these kinds of photograms. Started photographing her community, photographing herself, Yayoi Kusama, Ushino. Here is Daido Moriyama, who visited her, Jasper Jones, who visited her in her studio. And she ended up on this very simple things. So after all these kinds of experimentations, she ended up at these kinds of very simple things of flowers. This is fantastic. It's a series she did with photos of roses. She assembled them, rephotographed them, and assembled them into these kind of I Ching shape pictures. But all of this is about things about notions of reproducibility. Here she uses the same flowers, the same negative, and rotates it, reproduces it on the same photogram. So here she helps us to get back to the beginning, to Benjamin and his ideas about the artwork in the age of its reproducibility, which is something that I want to end with.
Okay, Stefan, thank you so much. Very interesting. I was particularly fascinated by how small, I mean, from a design point of view, how small the images were of these huge pieces and surrounded by so much white space. Yeah, that was quite interesting.
Like with this MacBook at the end here.
I was thinking, yeah, some of those there that you're saying were quite huge, and yet they're printed in the book so small. I think, I mean, I wonder how they came to this idea to do that instead of like maybe making fold out pages or something like that. Talking about materiality and that kind of.
Well, I think this is something that all these three books share. It's when you have photographers that are so where they are finished here, when they have it assembled and put it on the wall, then they are finished. This is the artwork. And now we're entering the age of reproducibility. Now we're starting making photos of finished artworks.
Yeah.
There's always a gap between how they actually are, how the material object is, and how the reproduction is, and how you put it into a book. And this is pretty much the same with Deborah Turbeville and her photo collages. You don't know if you can really see this in the reproduction here. She's always using this kind of tape here to see on top of it. And she's using here in the beginning, you probably see it a little bit clearer. She's using these hair pins to pin everything together. And the fabric of the heavy paper she's using to assemble it. All of this is important. And all of this is hard to reproduce in a photo book.
And do you feel that you have seen the photo now that you've seen it reproduced?
No, it just makes me eager to see the original, to get closer to the aura of these things.
Yeah, yeah. Does anybody have any questions for Stefan?
Hi, this is Victoria. This is great, really inspiring. And I love the word aura, because that's aura is something comes off the paper, off the image. It sort of floats around. And yeah, have you actually seen? I've seen some of the Tuberville's photos. You know, there's been shows here and there. After she died, you could see some of these, and the materiality. But the materiality, you know, like you can, how to get to it and how to cut up, and you know, in this age when everything is so. You know, I don't even know the word for it, you know. And so, and so how do you expand the aura?
Yeah, I've actually seen, this is something, this is the Sarah Moon show. There was a large Sarah Moon show in Hamburg here in Germany. And Sarah Moon is the one of the three. She makes these negatives. So
Yeah.
You have two options here. You have the option to actually show the Polaroid negative, which is like this. It's an 8x10, which is wonderful to look at. But you also have the option, no, it has a negative and a positive. So you can show the positive, the small positive, or you can use the negative to make an enlarged positive. And this is what they did in Hamburg. So they blew up this, there is this, let me see if I can show you the parrot here. There is this wonderful picture of a parrot that you see here. And they blew it up in Hamburg. They blew it up to 1 by 2 meters. So it was a gigantic blob of color. And it was wonderful to look at. So that is another way to approach this. And this is the beauty of this Polaroid sheet, that you get a positive, the actual thing, and a negative that allows you to enter this reproduction cycle. But the other things, I'm with you. It's hard to reproduce. This is, you get an idea of the image when you look at the Kunié Sugiura. You get an idea and you get inspired to do that, to make that yourself. This is why I showed these.
Well, I'm working on digital. I'm so lazy. I don't do my big camera. And, you know, just printing them on real paper, but giving them that the texture. We love that texture. And that's a better word is aura, giving them that, whatever it is.
Yeah, this is what is my takeaway from these kinds of works, to look at that and see, yeah, I want to print. I want to touch my photos. I want to hang them. And only when I do that, then I have an idea. This is what I said with, this is your task as a photographer. Where do you want to be? If you're a documentary photographer, you actually don't care for these kinds of things. You want to be printed in a newspaper. You want to be printed in a journal. So circulation, reaching people, this is important. And I think it's important for a lot of documentary projects to focus on that, to reach a lot of people, to transport information, to show, like this Memphis project. Look at the video, to show people, okay, these are people living in Memphis and they are inhaling these exhaust fumes. It's just about getting this across. But this is what you as a photographer, what was my takeaway from these kinds of things, is what you as a photographer have to decide. Where do you want to be? What do you want to do? Do you want to print? Do you want to circulate? Do you want to be famous? Do you want to touch your photography? Do you want to be seen by many people? Very personal question and very personal answer required from every photographer.
Thank you so much, Stefan. I think we're going to kind of close things down. So I don't, when is the next Photobook show? Is it in the fall? Are we taking break for the summer or?
Take a little summer break and then I come back retooled, hopefully with some new books.
Very good. Very good. I want to thank everybody for coming. Anya had to leave a little early today. And if there's somebody who wanted to say anything to Stefan, you could stick around. Otherwise, if I don't see your camera on, I will close you down there.
Thank you, everybody, for being here and for your patience with me. I realize that I got a bit carried away at the beginning, but that is just what the times do to you sometimes.